there's an underlying piece of data that I think we should keep an eye out for. I think Larry Sabato's right. You folks are right. There's money flowing to all sorts of candidates. How do you make a negative into a positive like this? Here's what I'll be looking at in the next 30 days when the data is produced. Where is this money coming from that Donald Trump and the other Republicans are pulling in? Listen, it's a good news story for Trump if somebody that gave him $25 6 months ago gave him another $25. That if existing donors are coming off the hip, that's good news and that's fantastic. And that's sort of the top line message. If, however, this money is coming from new donors, that is huge. That would be something I think that people are overlooking at this point. It makes a difference where the money is coming from. It's good either way, don't get me wrong, but it's really, really, really good if it's new donors. And it is a tectonic shift if some of this money is coming from minority donors, first-time minority donors. I've seen anecdotal evidence, not data yet, anecdotal evidence that this has been received in some of the minority communities as a way now that Donald Trump can empathize with how some of these folks might see the government. They feel like they're mistreated by the government for such a long time, and now they empathize with Donald Trump, and he can empathize with them. Go back to the 1990s, and I know we make fun of Bill Clinton's line about, "I feel your pain." But Donald Trump now has some credibility with some minority communities that he didn't have before. If that's translating into money and into votes, this is a really, really big deal. Keep in mind, Mitt Romney got about 4% of the African-American vote in 2012. Trump got about 6% in 2016. He got about 12% in 2020. Before the conviction, the numbers I saw were in the low 20s in the African-American community. That is a huge change. And it's one of the reasons Trump, who definitely lost votes because of this conviction, he lost what we refer to as these white suburban housewives in the Midwest. There's no question. But the reason you're not seeing him go down in any of the real polling data is that he seems to be making it up someplace else. That's what I don't think folks are talking nearly enough about. That's the data I'll be looking for.
Well, and I wonder, Mick, how the data may change, how everything you just said may be even further fueled by potentially actual incarceration of Donald Trump. Sentencing, of course, is on July 11th. He was on Fox over the weekend suggesting that he may end up going to prison. He doesn't think the public would stand for it, but he didn't necessarily say he himself is super opposed to going. Is that bravado, or do you think that Donald Trump may actually be willing to spend time behind bars if it helps him politically?
The answer to the second question is yes. If it helps him politically, I think, look, if you're the Trump team, and maybe this caught you by surprise, maybe you didn't think you were going to raise $50 million over a weekend from a conviction, you're having a rational discussion saying, boss, you go to jail, we may raise $100 million. I mean, you may win the presidency if you go to jail. I'm not saying he wants to go to jail. I'm not saying they're trying to figure out a way to get him thrown in jail. I think there's sort of all options are on the table at this point. Here's the conversation they're having. How do we take whatever happens and turn it into a positive for the campaign? If we get probation, that's fine. How do we make that a positive? If he goes to jail, how do we make that a positive? Keep in mind, he gets probation. They might, put him under house arrest. They might not let him leave his home, and they might be able to turn that into a positive. We are in the bizarro world of now having a leading candidate convicted of a crime. We have no precedent for any of this. What we do know is this: is that the response over the course of the last 72 hours has been huge in Donald Trump's favor in terms of the money. And I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Part of the message is resonating here in Washington. Mick, we were talking about the Defund New York movement by Marjorie Taylor Greene would actually block the state from receiving federal funds for, not just for the judiciary, but education and housing, wants to defund Jack Smith. When it comes to New York, though, do Republicans need to be careful about demonizing a state that's already hard enough to reelect Republicans?
Joe, when I was a young man, I wanted to be 6'2" and date Paulina Porizkova. None of those things happened. And none of this crap that Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about is going to happen. But to your point, I don't think demonizing them is going to hurt. Keep in mind, they expected to lose New York anyway. They expect to lose New Jersey. I know they're saying positive things about the chances they have there. And I will tell you that back in early 2020, before COVID really set in, so this is January now of 2020, I was still in the White House, and we expected Bernie Sanders to be the Democrat the Democrat nominee, we did have data that said that Trump had a really good chance to win New York and New Jersey, especially New Jersey. So that's not
How
that
about that?
far outside of reality. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think that, saying bad things about New York is really going to hurt them. Basically, if you're voting for Donald Trump and you live in New York, you might be upset with New York as well. So maybe that's falling on fertile soil.
Well, I guess you could ask this question not just about the state of New York, but broadly, Mick. Republicans who seem to be tying their fates to being outraged on behalf of Donald Trump, to this idea that his conviction is proof that the Justice Department is being weaponized, that all of this is unfair. In doing so, is it ultimately going to prove more advantageous to them or potentially come back to bite them?
Yeah, Kaylee, I'm going to answer that. I'm not dodging the question, and I'm really, and you know me, I'm not sort of towing the party line because I don't do that. But maybe they just really believe it. And I know we're so sort of jaded about politicians that we don't. That's not our natural sort of default setting. But maybe the Republicans really feel like this was unfair. They really feel like Donald Trump was targeted here. I believe that. I really do. And you guys, folks know I've been critical of the president in the past when I thought he deserved to be criticized. But there's just a sort of a reaction here that says this is wrong, that no other human being has ever been charged with this, that no other DA wanted to bring this. The Federal Elections Committee could have charged him with this. The Department of Justice could have charged him with this. The previous DA in Manhattan could have charged him with this. But Alvin Bragg ran for office saying, elect me and I'll go get Donald Trump. And when he didn't do that right away, some of his staff that really hated Donald Trump started quitting. So he brought it. Maybe the facts here just lend themselves to a conclusion that this is an unfair proceeding. And maybe even if you're a Republican who doesn't like Donald Trump, maybe you come to his defense on this one.
But
So
Mick,
I hear what you're saying, but go ahead.
Well, and I hear what you're saying and questioning the motive, but the fact is that it wasn't Alvin Bragg that convicted Trump. It was a jury of 12 Americans who were the defense decided were worthy of sitting on this jury. Does all of that, though, feeding into that narrative, what you were just saying, not undermine faith in an American democratic institution, which is our judicial system?
I certainly see that. And listen, I'm a conservative with a small c, and my default setting is to defend the institutions. I get it. But I also used to practice law. And I know that if I get bad jury instructions out of the judge, especially in a state where the jury cannot take the jury instructions back into the room, they're read the jury instructions, but they don't get to keep them. It's different in other states. You get bad jury instructions, a lot of times you just can't win, and that a lot of appeals, by the way, turn on the jury instructions that go to the jury. Listen, I have faith that the jury took their job seriously. I really do believe that. And that's based on sort of some of the empirical evidence we got talking to the folks who had been through the process. It seems like these folks really were going to take their job seriously. And most juries do that, by the way. The overwhelming number of juries do that. But if you get a bad jury instruction, for example, that doesn't clarify what that other crime has to be. Keep in mind, this was not a deal about, there's not a charge about the hush money payments. It was the accounting for the hush money payments and how that was in the furtherance of another crime. And if the jury instruction doesn't give evidence about the other or give any direction on the other crime, I mean, maybe the jury felt like they had no choice but to convict, given the instructions they received. I get it, and look, I'm with you. I want to defend the institutions, and usually I'm the person who does that. But I also understand how the legal system works. If you get bad jury instructions from a bad judge, you can get some bad decisions. That's why appeals take place, and why oftentimes those appeals are successful.